I've been working on some strange things of late, which I'm almost afraid to talk about. But since they've been published, I guess I shouldn't at all hold back. But it sounds a little kooky. It sounds like the kind of things that I receive in, emails and crank letters for the past 30 years. It has to do with questioning whether the speed of light really is the limit for signal transmission. And we all know that, as anyone who's taken basic physics, studied special relativity, that it's an absolutely well-established fact that locally, the speed of light is the limit for signal transmission, obviously going back to Einstein and a gazillion experiments since. But there are some unusual contexts that theories like string theory suggest. And those contexts suggest that the overall shape of space might be non-trivial in the sense that it might not just sort of go on forever. Space might curve back on itself. And you can ask yourself, what if the universe is in the shape of a loop, or at least there are dimensions that are looped, that as you go out in one direction, you go far enough, you'll come back to your starting point. And so we began to study signal transmission in universes where the signal could go all the way around the universe en route to its destination. And we found in certain circumstances that I'd be happy to elaborate that you could have signals going in that unusual trajectory that would get to their destination faster than the signal that would seemingly be the quicker one, moving right through the space-time without traversing these closed curves. And so we found that there are signals that can go from here to there faster than the speed of light.
This is related to the topology of the universe and not the variable speed of light?
Yeah, this is not a variable speed of light type of contribution. As you know, as you're making a reference to, there's been a whole industry that various physicists pursued over the course of many years, wondering about whether the speed of light might vary through time, a temporal dependence to the speed of light. Very interesting idea. I really don't know that there's much evidence for it, nor is there much evidence for what I'm talking about either. So this is like throwing stones in a glass house. But be that as it may, you're right. It all has to do with the topology of space. And if that topology is non-trivial, if there are non-contractible loops in that space, then that allows for qualitatively different trajectories for signals. And when you take those into account, you find that the signals can have a net speed that's faster than the speed of light. And moreover, it starts to sound a little bit kooky, but when you take special relativity, you learn that if signal can go faster than the speed of light, then there are observers, according to whom that signal may arrive at its destination prior to the time at which it was emitted. And indeed, we find examples of that. In other words, we find examples where you can send a signal into the past. And again, I hesitate saying this, but you asked me the question, what I've been working on lately. So I feel I need to answer fully and truthfully. I hesitate to say this because this has sort of been the playground of kind of thinkers who wanted to upset Einstein and become the new Einstein, to try to find some flaw in the special relativity. This is not a flaw in the special relativity. It's a feature of the special relativity when applied to a universe that has one of these non-trivial topologies.
So a closed time-like curve doesn't go against general relativity. Gödel had a solution that has closed time-like curves. Are you suggesting some amendment to general relativity, or are you just saying, look, the actual structure of space-time or the shape of it is different, so you're not proposing new laws?
No laws. Yeah. And so, the whole notion of closed time-like curves is a tricky one. That's one where there's a full trajectory that gets back to its starting point prior to when it departed. And we don't exactly find those kind of structures in these theories. So if I send a signal out into space and send it somehow into the past, and then someone in the past gets that signal and fires back toward me, the return signal will always get to me in at least no time. In other words, it won't be that I get the signal prior to the moment when I emitted it. So this would allow for interesting things such as, we've always worried, well, worry is probably too strong a word. We've always noted that if we discover intelligent life out there in the cosmos and it's very far away, how are we going to have a conversation, right? We send out a signal, hey, how you guys doing? And what do? We wait like 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years for the return signal. And by that point, we've forgotten that we were in a conversation at all. But in the theories that I'm describing now, with these universes, with these non-trivial topologies, you can send a signal out into space and the person can get it and respond, and you will receive it in virtually no time, in as little time as one can imagine. And so you can have a real-time conversation with someone who's at an arbitrary distance. So I think that's pretty startling and mind-boggling and kind of wonderful. And who knows, if any of these ideas happen to be true, it would allow for conversations that in the more usual setting would just be impossible. But no, it's no amendment to general relativity. It's no change at all to the fundamental laws. That's the kind of fun thing about this approach. If you come along and say, well, let's now bend the laws of physics as we knew it in the past, change it in some way. Sure, obviously you're going to get some new effects, but then it all depends on the utility of it, depends on, was that amendment, was that change at all reasonable? So we're not changing the laws of physics at all. We're just considering shapes of space that are very natural in certain unified theories like string theory, Kaluza-Klein type theories that people studied in the past, and just examining conventional physics in a new setting, as opposed to new physics in either conventional or new setting.
Is any of this related to wormholes, or is this separate?
It is definitely separate from wormholes in the conventional way that people think about wormholes, but there is a deep association in the following sense. If you are looking at a signal that's traversing, say, a circular dimension of space, one of the most profitable ways scientifically of studying that is to imagine cutting that circle and opening it up into a line, say an infinite line, and then just having global identifications. Point 0 identified with 2 pi r, identified with 4 pi r, with 6 pi r, and so forth. And in that way, you effectively have a circle because of those identifications, but you've unraveled it into a more conventional shape, a line. And then when a signal goes from 0, say, to 2 pi r, what's really in some sense happening is the signal is then, in essence, jumping through a wormhole and going back to its starting point. And so you can reframe everything that I'm talking about using the language of wormholes, but wormholes are not as essential to the story as it might be in certain other applications where you start to worry about things like, well, is the wormhole traversable? Will it stay open long enough for someone to actually go through or for a signal to go through? In this case, a wormhole is really more of a technique, a mathematical technique for analyzing the situation, as opposed to being fundamental to the whole idea.
If you enjoyed that clip, then the full podcast is out right now. You can click around here. Enjoy. Subscribe to Theories of Everything to get notified of upcoming podcasts, as there are new full-length podcasts every week on the topics of mathematics, physics, consciousness, free will, and AI.